Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is MIshelle Botman. Welcome to this OTF Connects presentation titled Student-Centered Kindergarten to Grade 8, Culturally Responsive Coding Experiences. And this is part 2 of the webinar that is facilitated by Melanie Mulcaster, MIshelle Pitter-Adlam, and Amanda Williams-Yeagers. It is the second webinar facilitated by Melanie, MIshelle, and Amanda. And it is the number 5 in our series of 6. And we have one more next Thursday. It will be the last one of the school year. And then we will have nothing in June and July, but OTF is going to organize the Summer Institutes in August, and we will have 10 days of Summer Institute during the month of August. And I will help with some of these webinars in August. So please visit the OTF website to register yourself. And I hope that I will see you in August again. And I actually see some familiar name that were with us last week. So for those of you who were with us last week, I just want to say thank you for coming back again. And for those of you who are new with OTF Connects, I just want to welcome you as well. And thank you for joining us for the first time. So we have 84 teachers that have registered for this session, and we are 29, 30. We are just 30 in the classroom right now, and a few more are going to join in a few seconds. I'm going to start by just reading a quick land acknowledgement that OTF is asking us to read. My mistake. So we acknowledge that we are all gathered in the territories of various indigenous people, and we further recognize their stewardship of these lands in which we live, learn, work, and play. And so we are definitely thrilled to have you all with us again today. And we are extremely happy to have Melanie Mulcaster, MIshelle Pitter-Adlam, and Amanda Williams-Yeagers for this new OTF Connects webinar. And I'm sure it's going to be absolutely great. Let me just quickly go through a brief introduction. Melanie is the instructional coordinator for libraries K-12 for the Peel District School Board. She's a lifelong learner and maker who is passionate about inspiring and empowering modern learners to discover, connect, innovate, and explore. MIshelle Pitter-Adlam is a teacher librarian at the Clark Boulevard Public School. Her passion is to nurture a healthy self-identity in her capable modern learners. She thrives in creating access and opportunities to empower modern learners for STEAM trajectories. And then last but not least, Amanda Williams is an elementary teacher's librarian in Halton who works with students in kindergarten to grade 8. She has presented provincially and internationally on the arts in education, including a focus on inquiry and dance at DACI in Denmark. Amanda's current focus is on innovative learning models, including maker education and design thinking. She believes that everything is better with a little sparkle, and she created that lovely glitterarian neologism to define herself. And I love that new word. Yeah, fantastic,
Thank
Amanda.
you.
Don't be modest about it. It's a really great word, and I hope it's going to catch up.
Here's the thing. I love my colleagues here who are fellow librarians, but the title wasn't sparkly enough. So glitterarian became the title that I chose to self-identify as. And the kids look at me like I'm a little bit off, but then when I explain it's like a librarian plus sparkles, it just makes sense. So
Exactly.
thank you.
Exactly. Perfect. So I've done my quick introduction. It's 4:05, 33 people in the class. So I think we're about ready to go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then you guys can jump in. Thanks so much.
Let me go here.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'm just waiting for Melanie to share. Are you sharing?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Okay, perfect. Time for my joke. Oh no, darn. Almost got them.
Foiled again.
Don't worry. If everyone is worried about, what happens if something goes wrong with the technology as it does virtually, I have a series of jokes prepared that are even somewhat funny. So I've got you, don't worry. Welcome back. If you were here last week, if you were not here last week, welcome for the first time. Don't worry, because we're going to catch you up and connect you and do some really exciting things, hopefully, for you tonight, with you tonight. So thanks for being here. MIshelle has informed us that it is less sunny than last week, so more of you may in fact attend. So either way, we're happy you're here. Maybe some of you are outside in the sunshine and doing this, which would be lovely too. So welcome back. Okay, next slide. We wanted to, so if you were here last week, we sort of gave you some guiding questions for you to think about as you left last week. We wanted to begin this week by reframing and considering those questions again. So that's where we're going to start this evening. Melanie, with her magical technology skills, is just moving things around. She's going to put a Padlet link in the chat. Right,
Actually, you are going to put the Padlet link in the chat.
Are you sure?
Yes, it's in the notes.
I know where it is. Okay.
I just had to, I forgot to embed it. Like, I'm really tired today. I forgot to embed it in the slide.
We're all feeling it. Don't worry. I'm going to put it in the chat. And anyways, what we'd like you to do is consider all of these questions. If one really resonated with you for your own personal reflection, we'd love for you to just tell us what you think. When we did this last week, and especially if you were here, you'd know that the Padlet sharing was just incredible. So we invite you to be incredible again and consider, whoa, you just did it.
I put it up so that everyone can see.
I know. Okay. I'm
yes.
with you. I understand. You want me to put the link in the chat so people can participate. All right. That's good. There we are, my friends. So what we're asking you to think about, what communication barriers exist for students with print difficulties or learning exceptionalities? What communication barriers exist for students who have varying cultural and linguistic backgrounds? So really diverse cultural or linguistic backgrounds. What we mean about that is we recognize that some cultures don't prioritize print. When we prioritize print as the only mode of communication as an educator, we're doing those kids a disservice, right? So what barriers do you think exist for any of those students who come from different backgrounds? And how might we approach learning through an asset-driven stance? So rather than saying they can't, how can we really focus on asset language and an asset-driven stance in terms of what they're doing and how they're communicating, and how might that connect to coding platforms, and how can we utilize coding platforms as a means of communicating? So that's a lot. I get it. Pick one, pick all of them. Share your thinking, and then we're just going to sort of reframe and reconnect on those topics. And thank you for being awesome and participating.
And I'm very glad that I set the settings that you're able to contribute. I've been in the last 2 workshops that I've forgotten to modify the settings.
Happens to the best of us, Mel. No worries.
Works. It does. We can adapt and modify, and if anything, I'm amazing at showing how to make changes at the last minute, how to be flexible. Is that how we say it?
Sure. Yeah, that's a big one. I'm just reading some of these wonderful ideas. Difficulty understanding informal use of language, slang, or jokes, and that can often come across as offensive. So that's an important
even
one.
the context of sometimes what they're reading, because they don't have that cultural background, right? Or even, like we said, expressing themselves in their writing, because we know that print is not the main form of communication in today's society. We're very visually driven.
Absolutely. I like the one that says switching the language to their first language.
Mm.
That's very, could go, I can see that really engaging teachers with how they can approach that.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that I realized there are so many different languages that you can caption on YouTube. And even that made things more accessible for kids when you're sharing, you know, a video that you want your whole class to see, but not everyone understands the first language. So
that's why sometimes I think block-based coding can be so valuable for our learners, because we can use, you know, the colors, and even Scratch, I know, has done a lot to make sure that their platform is in different language. I know Links Coding has done a lot of work with the Indigenous languages, some of the Canada Code to Learn projects. So that's amazing too.
The social isolation is such a big one. You know, I think we're facing an unusual situation with such a disconnection. So we have social isolation in that context, but also when there are communication barriers because of cultural reasons or other reasons, the social isolation is a big one. That's great too. Thank you.
And that really rings true to me. I actually had a discussion with Mel earlier on this week about even for parents navigating devices as we're online, we're doing distant learning in Peel at least. Some of the barriers of just the language to explain to them what to press in order to access D2L or Google Classrooms, you know. So yeah, that's a huge, the isolation piece, because they do feel isolated because not only the language, but the actual device, they feel that they can't help their children, or their children can't help themselves to navigate through that.
I like to also perhaps print can impede students engaging in coding with they're unable to read. Perhaps the coding apps can read words to students. I know that Microsoft has done some work with the immersive reader in Minecraft, and now I just remembered, I forgot, there's another resource I can share. Looking at students with exceptionalities, another coding platform that actually reads the code out to the students after they've done it. So if I can find it later on, I'm sure Amanda or someone else will share the screen. I can find that, put that in the chat box.
Okay.
We'll give it about one more minute. Do you think, Amanda?
I think that's great.
I like the partnership. The importance is built into coding platforms, even just that problem solving, that partnership and group work. Okay, good, they added on.
Terminologies.
Oh, body language too. Why are you all so brilliant? This is so great. I'd like to hang out with you more, just so you know.
Ideas are faster than writing, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we'll go back to the slide deck. Thank you for sharing all of your amazing thoughts. Again, you will have access to this Padlet afterwards. You can always come back to it.
Okay, so we just talked about framing, and so now we're going to talk about the guiding questions that are going to frame our presentation today. Number one, what do we need to continue to consider when choosing texts for learning or tools students use to communicate their learning? And we touched upon that in the Padlet we just all participated in. Number two, what possible frameworks for implementation might we utilize to develop learning experiences? And number three, where does computational thinking and coding fit in our curriculums? What no-tech, low-tech, and high-tech options can be incorporated? And so our goal today is to share our ideas and our thinking around these three guided questions, and hopefully it will support your journey with culturally responsive pedagogy and teaching.
And just to note as well that we are on our own journeys, and we are don't claim to be experts by any means. And of course, we would love your feedback and we would love to grow together. This is just where we are, and we're hoping it can inspire you as well.
Absolutely.
So again, we're going to do a word cloud. And again, to revisit, what might we continue to consider when selecting culturally responsive texts and creating meaningful learning experiences for our learners? So we're going to use a tool similar to Mentimeter that we used last week. And I've never actually used this tool before. So I thought, what a better opportunity to use a tool that you've never used before with a new presentation. So we're risk takers on this team. High five, everyone. So we're going to try this. This tool is called Slido. If Amanda and MIshelle can post it in the link. So again, yeah, perfect. So let's open it up here. So there, that's where your answers will show up if hopefully you are able to join. Let's see.
1 second. I'm almost there. Okay. I put it in the links in there.
Okay, amazing. I don't think this one is as pretty as the last one we did. It doesn't have enough sparkle, Amanda.
I'm not going to disagree with that statement.
Oh, there we go. Oh, it is working. Hello. I love it when risks pay off. Oh, I'm so happy right now. That's it. I'm done. Thank you, everyone. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
We'll give you about another minute or two. Thank you. Oh, look at how it's changing.
That's what I'm looking at.
I think with the Mentimeter, it didn't necessarily make the words bigger. Weren't they all the same size?
Yes, I think so.
I really like the author's lived experience and how does that affect the representation of what comes out in the text, right? Again, the importance of own voices.
Mm.
We'll give about 1 more minute. Thank you so much. Connections, cultural backgrounds. I like the positive experience. Authentic representation. All right, I'll go back to the slide deck. Thank you so much for this. Oh, mirrors and windows. Amazing. Truthful. Unbiased. Oh, now people are just, now it's coming in, so now I have to wait.
Yeah.
Appropriate language, yes.
Motivational. I like that.
Okay.
Encourage connections. Did you see that one, Mel?
Current connections?
Encourage connections.
Encourage connections. Oh, I like that.
Encourage connections.
Opportunities to share.
Yeah.
Encourage. I thought you said courage.
No, encourage.
I do like courage connections too.
Encourage.
I think they both work. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think much of what you've said will unravel, not unravel, will be further amplified in the next couple of slides. So I was fortunate enough to attend a session with Dr. Andrew Campbell. If you've ever seen him speak, he's a professor from the University of Toronto. And really connected with me. This was one of the slides from his slide deck when he talked about culturally responsive and relevant pedagogy. Really, and then again, we talked about focus on the student strengths. So how are we looking at our students from an asset-driven lens? It focuses on students' previous experiences, and I love that, their cultural capital. Goldie Muhammad often says, we need to cultivate the genius that's in front of us. And every one of our children has that genius in them. So I loved how that connects to their cultural capital. Adopting alternative pedagogies, so adopting different ways of learning and teaching that really meet the needs and make our students, see themselves reflected, honored, and valued in our curriculums. And then again, focus, I really love that last one, focus on language of hope and becoming. And really in anything that I hope with any of the students that I have worked with, and again, I don't believe that I have been the best educator in the past, but I'm going to continue working, is I want my learners to see themselves as who they are and who they have the power to be. I just, that last line is just so impactful for me.
So this is, Mel is speaking about Goldie Muhammad and some of the other things we talked about last time. This brings us back to Zaretta Hammond's work. And we mentioned last week about culturally responsive teaching in the brain. And we really wanted to share this clip with you because it really speaks to the difference between multicultural education, social justice education, and then the culturally responsive education. And so, in this clip, Hammond talks about this idea of equity light, which I'm not sure if everyone is feeling this, and I shall not necessarily remind you of what school board I work with. But I think equity is a big push right now. Sometimes I have concerns about whether we are doing that equity light thing. And I know in my own practice, I thought multicultural education was enough. And what this video, with a short couple-minute clip, helps us to think about is that agency and voice. I know that was on our Wordle last week, and how we're actually accelerating learning. And Hammond talks about the fact that there may be value to all three of these columns, but if we really want to look at student agency and we want to look at really accelerating learning and moving especially away from that idea of equity light, the culturally responsive education is really what we want to look at. So
ready?
Look at this. Yeah.
Instead, we need to be thinking about how is equity at the core? How are we maintaining that lens and sharpening it so that we are continually helping the student who is furthest away from opportunity get closer? So one of the ways that I help people think about this is really thinking about the distinctions between multicultural education, social justice education, and culturally responsive education. So what's really important about multicultural education is that really focuses on celebrating diversity. And this is where we can fall into the trap of equity light. We just do the kind of the kumbaya thing, and everybody is included, and we mention a little bit of everybody's culture and background, and then we really are all coming together. That focuses on social harmony. And what's important to lift up is this element is an important aspect of the kind of learning environments we want, but it is not enough to accelerate learning. So students that are furthest away from opportunity need acceleration in their learning. So social justice education, does it offer us that opportunity? Well, we want students to be reflective about kind of what's going on around them. We want them to build that capacity. So part of what we need to be able to do is help students really start to think about that critical consciousness. But here's the thing I want to point out. These first two things, multicultural education and social justice education, don't focus on learning. It is culturally responsive education that really has that focus on accelerating learning so that students have independent agency. And this is more than just choice. This is really that I have the cognitive capacity to take in information and learn at the highest levels.
Thanks, Mel. So we did present that, that chart to you last week, but I think it's really important that the person who is responsible for creating that document speak to it, right? And so in hearings, Retta Hammond speak about that. I think we really want to continue to ground the work that we're doing in this webinar around that learner agency piece. So thought that was a good way for you to sort of hear it from the author herself.
Instead, we need to be thinking about.
And you can watch it again if you like it that much. Thanks,
I
Mel.
always do that. There we go.
Oh, good. It's the
Okay.
slide's fault, not yours.
Okay, and so one of the ways that we can do that, do the culturally responsive education, build that type of mindset where we're not only looking at representation, but we're looking at skills, we're looking at the identity, we're looking at the criticality, and we'll get into that later on, is Goldie Muhammad has called them text sets. And text sets, I hope I'm enunciating enough so that people can hear it, text sets are where you are looking at any subject in the curriculum, but you're presenting it using multimodal text. You're using print, you're using images, you're using video, even sound recordings, so that all of your students have an entry point. And to me, that's a wow, because myself, I love books. Obviously, I'm a teacher librarian. And so books is always my go-to. And I often use picture books because they're very clear, concise, right to the point. But when I listened to Goldie speak about these texts, it was an epiphany for me, because I thought, do I always have to start with the text? Could I start by putting out some pictures about an issue or whatever, and asking students to wonder about that? And then Goldie talks about the joy. The picture here is a study that she conducted with some students about South Africa and Nelson Mandela in particular. And she literally started off with that picture in the middle, showing the joy, because we all know that the story and the journey of Nelson Mandela, there was a great deal of pain. There was a great deal of just abuse that happened there. So she wanted to share with her learners that even in the midst of that, South Africa, there is still joy. It's not just a story of pain and suffering, but there is the joy there, and there is the genius there. And so she started hers off with the picture of joy and sharing that with the students, and then looking at the decolonization of Africa, and then looking at the music, because music does lighten our mood. You know, you could be like really stressed, you could really feel like, oh, I'm just having a really bad day. You listen to a song, or a song comes, and it just brightens your spirits. And so that's how she went about doing that. And she said, when you do that, if you have a student that perhaps is experiencing difficulty with their reading or whatever, it helps them to comprehend the text, because they have all of these other reference points that helps to deepen their understanding of whatever it is that you are teaching them. And so this slide is just explaining that to you, that a text set is something where you would pull something that is print, you would pull an image, you would pull a video, maybe someone speaking, I'm just thinking of spoken word for poetry or whatever. You may find something that aligns with what you're studying, and bring that and share that with your learners, because from that it can cause, well, it will cause all of the students to have some form of an entry point, which then brings in to play engagement, which will allow for building of capacity, building of skills, which is one of the things that we as educators are here to do.
And this, the link at the bottom is a 20-minute talk by Goldie, and I believe that's shared in, you'll get the slide deck later so you can watch that.
Absolutely.
So we promised we'd get into some of the lesson work and the curriculum connections and do some more hands-on pieces this week. Before we do that, this is a video that looks at the value of critical consumption. I think in this digital world, this very digital and virtual world that we are now in, due to circumstances beyond our control, our learners are really looking at consumption a lot. And there have been, discussions around the idea that creation is better than consumption, and that in order to have kids make things or apply their knowledge, we need to provide those learning opportunities before or instead of students looking at things and just simply consuming. And I think that's been sort of the debate, one of the debates around learning online and virtual learning is, are kids just watching videos, and what are they doing with that? Are they applying those skills, and how? So what we want to do here in showing you just another really brief clip is we really want you to consider how you can, as an educator, and certainly, we'd love to hear your ideas, how can you provide opportunities that students can consume the learning, but consume it critically. And so when we look at that relationship between critical consumption, which is looking at something with a critical lens, and then creating, where does cultural relevance fit into that? And this video, what I love about this video, it's John Spencer, if you're familiar with his work, is he gives a lot of examples about what types of things experts in a real world context need to consume critically in order to be creators. I'll just leave it there, and let's go ahead and take a look at that.
It's easy to think of creating and consuming as if these two actions were diametrically opposed. However, creativity doesn't happen in a vacuum. Okay, that was a really bad dad joke, but when you look at makers, they are often critical consumers of the same type of work they create. Master chefs love to explore new food and have great meals. Songwriters make mixtapes of their favorite songs. The greatest architects travel to distant cities and tour buildings to find inspiration. Filmmakers are constantly watching movies, and athletes watch other athletes in their fields to discover new approaches. Fashion designers look at outfits to gather ideas, and writers are constantly reading books. Engineers study objects within their world, and artists visit museums. In other words, makers are frequently consuming, but they're doing it with intentionality. There's often this ongoing cycle that starts with critical consuming. Here you ask questions and seek out new ideas. You're curating information and geeking out on your craft. And this leads to inspiration. It might be a mashup of multiple ideas, or you might offer a fresh perspective to a known problem. Often you'll plan and design, but sometimes you play and experiment. And ultimately that leads to creative work. Now this could be solving a problem or creating a product, making performance art, planning an event, or building a system. But the more you create, the better you understand your craft, which leads to a deeper ability to consume critically, where you then find more inspiration, and the cycle continues.
So the first time I saw that video, I didn't think about it from any kind of cultural responsive lens. I just thought, oh my goodness, we can actually have kids consume. But when we reconsider where the role, I think, and I certainly admit that I get things wrong, where the role of culturally responsive pedagogy fits in this, is I think it's about representation. And I'd love to hear what other people think too. But I think when we're providing materials for students to consume, even with a critical lens, where does the representation fit into that? And can students see themselves reflected in what they're critically consuming? And what kind of learning opportunity does that provide for our students? So I don't know if my wonderful colleagues want to add their thoughts about that.
I think you're bang on.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the creativity, when you look at any group of people, is like what they're interested in. And if they don't see themselves in it, they're not interested in it. So I think there is a huge cultural piece there that just drives the learning.
Yep. If we don't make those connections with our students, we'll never get to the curriculum.
Yeah, and that's the key. It's the relationship, right? It always starts with the relationship, because that's when you know what they love, which I think Chris Emden said.
Oh, there I go again. I'm really good.
Not your fault, I promise.
There you go.
Okay, so using the culturally responsive, here I'm getting tongue-tied, sorry, frameworks to develop learning experiences. Right here, we just have two, and they're hyperlinked, two links to the framework for Goldie Mohammed. It is a lesson plan framework, and then the Ontario Ministry monograph, which talks about the 6 themes within a culturally responsive educator should have. And it's a mindset. I think that we really need to underscore that and highlight there is no checklist out there for being a culturally responsive instructor, educator. It's a mindset. It is not something that you turn off when you go home every night. It becomes part of you. It becomes part of you, of who you are, because you realize that your lens is not the only lens, and your lens in a lot of situations is not the lens that is going to generate the excitement, the curiosity in your learners. And as Mel said at the beginning, we are not experts at this. We're on a journey, and that's part of the journey, is just learning as you go. And a lot of it is learning from your students, and how you learn from your students is listening to them, hearing what they love, and so forth, and sort of driving the learning that way. And that creativity comes out, I think. Did either one of you want to add to that?
That was great.
Good job. So the next slide is just an article I read with an interview with Dr. Goldie Mohammed. Again, I think I'm fangirling here a little bit, but that's okay. And again, the interview is linked in the slide, and I think she really speaks to it. So what is the issue the most urgent for students learning? How does this issue connect to the world, and how can I connect learning skills to this issue? So if we're looking at the holistic experience, yes, connecting to our students is one of them, but at the end of the day, we are, as educators, we need to speak to the curriculum, but how do we do that in a way that really, our students are vested in that information?
Mm-hmm.
So then we have, how does it all fit? So this is an amazing infographic from OAME. And again, it's hyperlinked there, and there's some great resources on that site. the Ontario Association of Mathematics for Education. I'm probably messing it up, but it's something like that. But I really appreciate this infographic because it laid out for me, especially when we're talking about the mathematics curriculum, what are the expectations? It was a nice visual for me to understand what are the expectations in grade 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way through grade 8. And again, where does it all fit? If we talk about the unwritten curriculum, we talk about, again, like MIshelle said, that mindset for learning. What learning skills or what mindsets do we want to develop, and how does that also connect to the curriculum? And again, that, you know, coding platforms are just another tool or just another communication piece in which our students may or may not choose to express their learning.
Okay, I'm taking a risk. I'm just going to be really honest. I'm taking a risk on this one, not because of the quote, but because of what we're going to do with the quote. Please participate. Or, you know, just whatever. We'll make it work. I have faith in all of you because you're brilliant, even though I can hardly see anyone. I know you're there and you're brilliant. Okay. What we want you to do is take a look at this quote. Of course, it's from Hammond's work. I may be fangirling with her, as Melanie is with our friend Goldie. Please read the quote, and we're wondering if there is a word or a phrase, not more than a sentence, really less than a sentence if you can, that stands out to you. So take a moment and read over the quote, and we're wondering, what words do you think resonate the most with you? It could be the word relationship. It could be a social emotional connection. It could be cultural knowledge as a scaffold. Whatever stands out to you, you may write it down or just stick it in your brain. And we're going to take a dramatic approach to this. Are you ready for this really fun experiment? I know you are. Okay. I am going to invite you to turn on only your microphone. You can hide if you'd like, no problem. And if you could please say what the word or phrase is. Just speak it into the microphone. Now, I bet you're wondering, especially if you know you're teaching virtually right now, how are we going to do that? It's going to do that horrible microphone thing where everyone talks at once and you can't hear anyone. Well, do not worry, my friends. We are going to do this in a roll call, okay? And this is how it's going to work. I'm going to assign you a number very quickly. Laura, you're 1. Alex, you're 2. Angie, 3. Penman, 4. T. Mulrain, and I'm going to just apologize in advance if I'm saying your names incorrectly, and please, by all means, correct me. I appreciate that. Now, I've lost my number. You're 5. Kay is 6. Sierra, 7. Bren, 8. Ruth, 9. Charlie, 10. Prabjot, 11. I'm going to guess it's Zuan. Maybe, yes, no, maybe so. 12. Joshua, 13. Mahmoud, 14. I've lost track. 14. This happens to me all the time with children too. Aaliyah, 15. Stephanie, 16. It's going to be powerful if it works. Okay. Ashley, 17. Shanine, 18. Majub, 19. Allison, 20. Kiangwa, 21. Rebecca, 22. Ivy, 23. Kathy, 24. Karen, 25. Mo, 26. MW, 27. Maya, 28. Rebecca, 29. I'm losing track of counting. Orlean, 30. Thank you. Mikiru, 41. What number am I on? 31? 31. It's going to work. Joan, 32. And is it Antonia? 33. Okay. So we're going to try and do this in order. If it fails, this is the reality of education. Sometimes lessons are not the way.
And are you going to call out the numbers so they know when to go?
No, I was just going to have them go. Of course, Melanie, don't worry. I'm prepared for that part.
I was like, I already forget. Like,
Great, Melanie.
Melanie, you want a number?
Oh, no, sure. I'll be
I don't
34.
even know what my last number was.
I'll be 34.
Okay,
I'll
you
be
be 35.
35.
Perfect. MIshelle, are you participating? I know you're a moderator, but come on. Do you want to do it too?
His
MIshelle
mic
B?
is muted.
36. Perfect. I'm putting you in there. All right. So here's what's going to happen. Obviously, I want to respect the fact that you may not feel comfortable with this. And in a short webinar, it's often difficult to create the community or safe space or brave space to do this. But I'm going to ask that. I'm not going to tell you the number. I'm just going to ask that. Okay. Do you need the number? Fine. I'll say 1. I'll count. But what is really powerful when we actually do this with students is when it just happens in order. This is actually something called corridor of voices. It's a drama strategy that's used for decision making, which I'll speak to at another time. Let's see how this goes. Ruth, do you have a question? Or are you just ready?
I'm ready.
Oh my gosh, you're amazing.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, Mel.
Mel, there is
Mel
no
knows
time
I'm
to say
always
hello to
ready.
people. We're in the middle of a dramatic performance. Gosh. Kidding, Ruth. I'm glad you're ready. We'll just keep Melanie, you know. All right. So thinking of a word or a phrase when I call your number, no problem. I will not call you Penman. If I pause for a moment and nobody says anything, I'm just going to proceed to the next number, giving you the right to pass. Or if you are driving like Penman, no problem. All right. Let's see how this goes. What resonates with you? 1.
Scaffold.
2.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You stole my thunder with social emotional connection, but I'll let it slide this time.
Alex, I'm just going to be clear. I really appreciate your participation, but we're just saying one word. We're not talking about thunder. So proceed. Don't worry. I know her. I can talk like that. Go ahead. 2. Say it again. Come on. You can do it.
Well, now I want to change it to safe space. Thanks. Social emotional connection.
Thank you. 3. 4. I think that's Penman. 5.
Cultural displays of learning and meaning making.
Thank you. 6. 'K is saying connection. Thank you. 7.
Cultural knowledge.
8. 'And she's ready. 9.
Effective information processing.
10. 11.
Educator understands.
12.
Cultural knowledge.
Thank you. 13.
Promote effective information processing, sorry.
Okay. 14.
Recognize students' cultural displays.
15.
Responding positively and constructively.
16.
Safe space for learning.
17.
Cultural knowledge.
18.
Importance of being in relationship.
19. 20.
Relationship.
21.
Recognize student cultural displays.
22.
Meaning making.
23.
Relationship.
24.
Safe space for learning.
25. 26.
Cultural knowledge as a scaffold.
27. 28.
Safe space for learning.
29. 30.
Relationship.
31.
Connect social emotional connection.
And whoever else thought they were 31, you can also go.
That's me, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I've already lost track of numbers. Go ahead.
Connect with the student.
Love it. Thank you for participating. 32. 33.
Create a safe space for learning.
34.
Social emotional connection.
35.
Responding positively and constructively.
I ordered one for the mint. Remember we talked?
That was very powerful. I think the children in the background were also trying to participate. I felt that. I hope you did too. MIshelle, would you like to participate? I don't want to put you on the spot. You can pass if you'd like.
No, fantastic. I just wanted to say it's a great exercise. I think it was very original. First time we did that, and I loved it. And of course, I can't, I'm repeating, but I like the emotional connections. So that's what I would choose myself. But yeah, great exercise. And thanks for participating. It was fantastic.
I think the word I would pick is relationship. But thank you so much to all of you. I hope you heard some of the repetitions, and that's powerful too, right? Because I heard a lot of social emotional connection and safe space for learning. And so when we do this exercise, recognizing it's somewhat dramatic, but you guys were incredible. Thank you. We get to see similarities. It's almost like an oral wordle, right? Some of the words are repeating. That means we're emphasizing them. And we recognize different things in this quotation, but all of the things that you mentioned were super powerful. So thank you for doing that. And now we're going to connect this to our computational thinking and coding skills.
We're going to unpack that further on. Was that just a rhetorical question that we're going to unpack further on, or did you want to talk about it now?
You mean the connection?
Yes. Actually, no.
Oh my God. Oh, that's how I feel. I'm so powerful. Oh my God.
Okay, no, I think we can ask everybody to turn off their microphones.
Good. I think we'll connect as we move.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So again, when we're examining methods for computational thinking, I think this is just bringing it back to our current context and the fact that we're all online, and really what considerations do we need to make what considerations do we need to have for our learners? So we're talking about no tech unplugged. You know, when we went through a couple of examples last week, we really need to consider what materials or loose parts might our learners have access to at home. We can't even assume that, as many of you know, that some of your learners may not even have crayons at home. So what materials do we have, or do our learners have access? So that's always in my mind, myself, when I'm trying to design learning materials. When we're talking about low tech applications for learning, we want to talk about what open source web-based tools might we have, what might we be able to access across various device platforms. So can you do this on a phone? Can you do this on a tablet? Can you do this on a Chromebook? We really want to provide an equal playing field, not even an equal playing field, equal opportunity for all of our students to participate. When we're talking about high-tech applications, again, we're really looking at that open source and free accessible content for our learners. And even if, again, some of the content that we may be looking at, it may be require our students to create accounts. So again, how are we making sure that when we're doing that, that we're ensuring our student privacy and we're following our board guidelines about what tools we should or should not be using learning? Did that make sense? Did I miss anything there that you can think of, Amanda or MIshelle?
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's good. Okay, so setting the stage for this type of learning and just a welcoming environment. This is a quote from Chris Emden. He wrote the book For White Folks Who Teach in the Hood, and the rest of y'all too. I've had the opportunity of listening to him speak twice, and both times I've just been frantically writing down, you know, just little things that he says and how it's like, yeah, that makes so much sense. I have this book, and it's like it's like a coloring book because I've underlined so many things because it just makes sense to me. So here, this quote is from the book, and it says, the students have to first connect to the classroom/school that welcomes their brilliance. That in itself, for me, that's it. And because it's talking about relationships. And every learner, there's something that they have. There's a skill. They all have brilliance. And as Goldie has said so many times, we need to cultivate that brilliance. I used to say we need to empower them, but that power is already in them. It needs to be cultivated. So I love that word, cultivate. But here, as I continue on, it says, welcomes their brilliance, celebrates it, and makes them realize that they have a natural ability by virtue of their I can never say this word, neo-indigeneity, meaning their cultural knowledge, their knowledge fund, to be academically successful. And that is really ultimately, when I read that, it's for all students, because if we welcome all students into the learning environment that we're providing, their brilliance is going to show. And so this is setting the stage for all of us. And so we can go on to the next one. So Goldie Mohammed, in her book Cultivating Genius, has this framework for assessing ourselves and to sort of bring that whole onus and accountability to what are we doing? Are we doing what we're setting out to do? And she breaks it up here into these 5 criteria. Identity. What does the curriculum, including text and exercises, help students to learn something about themselves and or about others? So once again, when a student can see themselves and what they're learning, or see value in that by seeing someone or something, that really helps to engage. Skills. Regardless of the world we live in, whether it's now during a pandemic or not, there are some fundamental skills that students and learners need. And so how does a curriculum respond or build student skills and standards? The next one, intellectualism. How does the curriculum respond to or build students' knowledge and mental powers? So that's the rigor and so forth, for them to be able to get through a process. What are they becoming smarter about? Criticality. How does the curriculum engage students thinking about power and equity and the disruption of oppression? Because definitely with racialized students, that is something that they are living on a day-to-day basis. And then the joy. How does the curriculum impart happiness in learning something new, or just learning in its most simplest way? Because something that brings us joy is something that we always want to do or participate in. Okay. And through that, using the whole idea of coding, these are 3 basic coding terms: sequences, instructions in the order they need to be in to accomplish the task; algorithms, the sequences of steps you take to accomplish a task; and the decomposition, to work backwards from the end to the beginning and break large problems into smaller ones. And oftentimes with the younger students, younger learners, I would just use these 3 and just break it down as we are going through the process. Okay. And so the first lesson is geared towards the early years and grade 1. It's hyperlinked where I found this idea. And so this book here, ultimately, one of the reasons why I was drawn to this book is because there's a little black boy on the front cover. And I thought, oh, origami, math, a little black boy, something that you don't see. So let me try to disrupt the narrative. And so I did. And I bought 2 copies of this book. So this little guy, his name is Joey, and he loves making things, building things, and so forth. And so one day at school, his another student in the class, his mother comes in and teaches the entire class how to make an origami swan. And he is just captivated. He's like, wow, I've got to learn how to do this. And so he goes home and he's trying to do it, and he's folding his sister's pieces of music. He's folding his mother's money. He's, you know, all of these things, but he can't get it. And he then travels. His mother wants him to do something else instead of folding every piece of paper in the house. So she sends him to the restaurant down the street. And when he's there, waiting to pick up the order, he's folding the napkin, trying to make it into a swan. And he's like, I just can't get this, because the owner's like, what's going on, Joey? And he's like, I can't get this, I'm trying. And he goes, just keep trying, you'll get it, you'll get it. And it's just a story of perseverance and a love for building and creating something. But you have to know the steps, which is the computational part of this. And so when you just break down this lesson, I looked at racialized parents are welcome in a school, because oftentimes students, the parents are actually racialized students. They don't feel that they're welcome in the school. They don't feel that their parents are welcome in the school. So this is a great opportunity to read this book and to sort of ask the kids about that, sort of inquire about, what do you think of this, a parent coming into the school and so forth and teaching something, and that racialized parents can teach and cultivate valuable skills. Because once you've read this and you show the students how this is a mathematical process, it's all of a sudden like, wow, origami, there's a mathematical component to it. And so that blends the fact that something that a little girl's mom did as a show and share at school takes on a great deal of validity and takes on more value. And Black boys are curious and have a mathematical mind. And so then going into the skills part, I just put the personal and social development, and that's from the kindergarten, early years document, and then the mathematical ones there, and then the visual art piece. The intellectualism, I will cultivate rigor when learning meaningfully, and the criticality part, my passions and interests can drive acquisition of new knowledge, and my success requires failure and practice. The last one for joy, my brain can creatively solve sequential mathematical code problems, and my origami is beautiful. And the two there. And this one is just for grade 2, looking at storytelling and how storytelling is very culturally deep, and using Scratch to create a story about your own community.
Grade 3.
Yep. And number 3 here is a beautiful book. The one that I used first was The Hike. It's about 3 little girls that go out on a hike. They're different races, and they just share the discoveries that they find. And I used this book to talk about the different landforms. The Hike is talking about the lowlands. A beach tail is Canadian Shield, Hudson Bay for the lowlands, and then using Scratch to modify it, where the students would create different backgrounds that would resemble the different landforms and create a story with that. Okay.
I really like the text you chose. I didn't know about those other two, so thank you.
You're welcome.
You learn something from someone every day.
Yes, yes.
So, you know, not unlike what MIshelle just mentioned about the power of storytelling, this grade 4 content looks at communication, and really the focus is intended to be the significance of multimodal communication, which connects back to what we said earlier about prioritizing print and how that moves away from creating equitable access for communicating for all of our learners. So a number of different books here. One of my favorites is I Am a Story. And it looks at different ways people have communicated from, you know, the past to now. And really, if I'm being really honest, I'm not totally sure I agree with all of the images, but I put this one here because one, it taught me to reflect, and two, if we're really looking at an example of multimodal communication, there are different ways to, it talks about, you know, hieroglyphs and oral storytelling and how we all have a story within us. It's interesting because even when you look at the cover, the representation is purple, but I might argue that you may be able to generalize race on the cover. And then the representation within the book is certainly a place for discussion. Mustafa, if you're familiar with the Forest of Reading, was a book that was in the Forest of Reading. It was a selection last year. It's about a boy who is unable to communicate with a little girl that he sees out at the park, and they find a way to communicate. And so it's because they speak a different language. And then finally, the other picture book listed here is Drawn Together. It was actually Melanie that introduced this book to me, and it has now become one of my favorites. It turns out there's a bit of a language barrier between a child and his grandfather, and they learn to communicate together through drawing pictures. So really powerful. So if you click, when you get the slide, if you click on the Mustafa book, and it's really up to you what you start with, but really connecting the coding, there's a specific lesson for the Mustafa book. And it encourages students to use coding to represent what they want to say to someone who speaks a different language. So in the context of the book Mustafa, it has, you know, the lesson encourages students to represent their ideas through words or images in the context of coding. So that's that there, and we'll go on.
Amanda, can I just interject? Drawn Together is also sort of laid out like a graphic novel to a certain extent. It's a brilliant book. Brilliant.
It really is. And there isn't a lot of text in it. There's only, I think, a couple of pages. Is that right, MIshelle?
Yeah. There's only a few, like it's like a wordless picture book. And it could go all the way up to, even in grade 8, you could use that because it's the illustrations are that good. But I'm sorry, we're running out of time.
No problem. Support is always welcome. And grade 5. So this lesson, when we look at the concepts from the math curriculum, the ideas around problem solving and computational representation of mathematical situations. So this is really neat. It's actually a lesson from Canada Learning Code. The lesson itself uses algorithms, so pieces from coding to create a recipe. And I think that's a great springboard for bringing in the idea of food as an element of cultural identity. And so there's sort of that caveat at the bottom there that says this specific lesson, I encourage it to be modified. And then there are, because the lesson itself deals with the making of chocolate chip cookies. But there's so many opportunities here to look at texts that explore cultural food. So I know in the community in which I teach, Bilal Cook's Dal is a very popular one because so many of the students at my school, that's their food. And it's about a little boy who's introducing his cultural food to his friends. And then for the sake of time, I won't go on too much, but these are just examples of picture books that bring the concept of food, community, and culture together. And so, you know, as sort of a quick side note, I have encouraged students at my school to share and document themselves along with their families creating or following a recipe for food that is of their culture. And so we've created sort of this school recipe book with documentation and imagery, and it's become this really beautiful piece in terms of sharing. So I think that there's something to that. And if we can encourage our learners to, you know, learn from the members of their family, get in touch with their culture, or maybe just investigate recipes online and then put it in the context of coding. I think we also bring procedural writing in, you know, it brings in a whole bunch of curriculum connected to coding, but also that cultural lens. So.
Okay, so this was grade 6, and again, like I said, I am on a journey. I am still learning how to code, and most of the time, my learners teach me how to code. But I really started looking. So I was looking at some of the Raspberry. So the number guessing game is linked to the Raspberry Pi Foundation with an activity that you code in Python to develop a program to guess a number. And then this Scratch and Mystery Integers. Again, relating to the grade 6 curriculum, that's related from the OAME site. So I started looking at thinking about numbers and what is the historical context or the historical background of numbers and how they were developed, and what is the significance for different cultures related to numbers, and what role do numbers play in our lives. So again, why is it and where is it important to understand numerical value systems and what importance they play in different cultures? How has the history of numbers been honored? Like even if when we talk about the Fibonacci sequence, Fibonacci actually wasn't the sole creator of the concept behind developing the Fibonacci sequence. It was developed by actually Indian mathematicians, but that's not often recounted when we talk about the Fibonacci sequence. And again, how have number systems and the history of mathematics been honored? You could even stretch that about who is being honored in mathematics and who is not. And then even talking about what numbers, either positive or negative, bring people joy. And that's why we started off with that joy with the jersey. So, most of our students can identify with numbers, having a number, their favorite number at the back of their back, or positive numbers or their favorite numbers. I know I'm very excited when I get my hydro bill and I have a negative balance. That brings me joy.
Today we're going to talk about numbers in China.
And then I go again playing films, so that's awesome. From grade 7, Goldie Mohammed actually presented to our board in March. So she presented this text, which really got me thinking. It's called Buzzing with Genius, talking about a Black scientist, Charles Henry Thomas. And it was him, learning in his questions about bugs. And then I found a really great another great resource to look at is TVO coding in the classroom. So this exercise there is, if we start with that text set, looking at layered text, that first picture is the beauty of bugs, and that's a BBC article. And then if we can follow up with buzzing with questions, then there's also Benjamin Banneker, another fabulous Black scientist who did a lot of work with cicadas and is often not recognized for his work. And then bringing in that Canadian context, you might want to take a look at the video. So Professor Madiane Andrade, she is a professor at the University of Toronto that studies black widow spiders, and she particularly studies their mating habits. It is a fascinating video, but again, you may want to preview it before you decide to share it with your learners, because there may need some ensuing conversation that happens again. But again, as an example of a great Canadian female scientist, Black female scientist is another great example. And then the TVO coding in the classroom is an example of taking a bug, using that as a reference and using it to solve translation, reflections, and rotations.
My name is Madiane Andrade. And this is some of what we do in my lab at the University of Toronto, Scarborough, where we work on black widow spiders.
Obviously, I'm really excited to share that with you today. And lastly, grade 8, again, another really great resource or organization to look at is the use, I think Amanda mentioned this earlier on, is talking about the microbit and how it relates to the SDG, social development goals, social sustainability goals, and it's hyperlinked here. So talking about a sensory classroom. So how might you use a microbit? And again, if we're talking about what aspects of a learning environment work best for me, what helps me feel valued, safe, and want to learn, and really bringing into that intellectualism. There may be students in our classroom that have sensory learning needs is what I'm trying to say. And how might we develop using the microbit? So if you haven't used the microbit, we've got there Getting Started with Sensors, and there's that lesson plan. How might we use the microbit in order to develop something that could take data from that environment. So that grade 8, if we're looking at that grade 8 curriculum, it's really about how are we using programming to collect data from our environment and how can we analyze that data. So for example, the microbit has, the new microbit has a microphone on it, and it can sense sounds. So you can even make a sound sensing machine that can modulate the sound levels in a classroom. And then of course here we have the text underneath. How are we doing for time? Oh my goodness.
Great.
Oh, there we go. I just want to share every video with you. Also worth checking out, these are some other organizations that are also worth checking out. Coders North is an indigenous organization that really connects indigenous perspectives and coding, and they have a number of different platforms. And I'm going to say this wrong. PINAQ is another great organization. They post STEM and Root magazines, and they have other articles that you can look at. The Learning Partnership is another great organization that you can sign your class up for different learning experience. Then we have Hacker Gal, Kids Code Jeunesse, Girls Who Game through Dell, and something that I know that Amanda and MIshelle have both been involved in the past, something myself and some of you may know Tina Zita, who's another Peel teacher librarian. For the last 2 years, during Hour of Code Week or Computational Thinking Week in December, we've launched something we call 12 Days of Books and Bytes, where we link a text to a coding experience. So this is this year's, or 2020, I guess, our curation of 12 days. And then here is Amanda, Tina, MIshelle, and I presented our 2019 collection at Treasure Mountain, Canada, at the Ontario Library Super Conference in Toronto in 2019. So it's linked to our presentation there and our 2019 examples. There's only one last thing that I wanted to show you. I did mention that one organization that I wanted to share with you, and it's codelearncreate.org. Code, Learn, Create. When we talked about students with exceptionality, so this is another great organization. And if we go to where it says build, so here's another example of an online learning platform that I think when I bring this down, it actually, if I press start, it actually will say the directions out loud. Okay, why are you not working? I don't know why I can't get it to all see. Start. If I know I haven't used this. Oh, it's the play button down there. I thought it spoke to me.
Replace movement.
So it does.
Delete movement.
So maybe if I hold it here.
Move.
Oh, there we go.
Move.
Okay. So then that would be turn.
Turn right. Turn left.
So that's just another another resource to take a look at from this organization at codelearncreate.org. Sometimes I feel like I talk very, very quickly. So on behalf of everyone, we want to thank you for learning with us today. And we have time for questions or comments or discussion. We have, I think, 10 minutes left. Thank you, team. Yay, I'm giving you a high five.
Yes, indeed. So thanks so much, Melanie, MIshelle, and Amanda for this wonderful webinar. And of course, if there are questions, feel free to post them in the chat box, or you can even unmute yourself if you want. I just want to, I'm going to post myself something in the chat box quickly. Yeah, part one, I see part one has been recorded, and you will receive tomorrow a follow-up email, and that gives you access to the archive on the OTF website. And you're going to see part two, and just under part two, you're going to see part one. So you can review either of the two webinars, this one or the webinar from last week. You can access the slides, you can access the links, and you can also listen to the recording. So all of that is going to be sent to you guys tomorrow. Let me quickly share again my screen for a second, if you don't mind waiting for a few seconds. Where's my screen? Oh, here it is. Here it is. Sorry. I just want to say that I love working with Melanie and MIshelle and Amanda. Usually the OTF webinars are a bit more like academic lecture. And what's nice about the three of you is like it's more like a dialogue. So you're chatting with each other and talking to each other, and it's very lively. And chatting, of course, with the audience. I think it's really good. And I like the fact that Amanda invited all the participants to jump in. So that was really a lot of fun and something that we don't usually do. So it's a great idea to remember. I really like that a lot. So I'm just going to conclude very quickly. I just want to remind you, you're going to get an email tomorrow. There's a little questionnaire. Please take a few minutes to fill it up for us. That would be great. And you will get, of course, access to the recording, the slides, the links, and all the archives on the OTF website. And I just want to tell you that we have one last coding session next Thursday at 4 o'clock, May 27. And we're going to be talking about Minecraft and Make Code Builder. And the presenter next week is Andy Forgrave. And that's going to be the last session before the summer break. And we're going to have a few OTF Connects Summer Institute in August, and you'll be invited for this institute as well in August. And so I hope to see you next week in August and maybe in October next year. So thank you so much, Melanie. Thanks, MIshelle. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks for the great session. And I wish you all a good weekend.
I think there's a question there that hopefully we can unpack. Just wondering if the making Kindle egg kind of good for using for coding. Can you expand on that? I'm not quite sure I understand. If you want to,
it just kind of map like the mapping. It just
yes.
It just idea is like because it's engaging and most kids they like it, so maybe we can use some stuff like with it's kind of coding also. I'm just reflecting on the coding ideas, so I was thinking this is a great idea and it's make kids also engaged in that. It's like Lego or something like that. I just, because when the kids, they see that, it's like the same idea of origami, the one.
Oh, origami?
Origami, yeah, it's similar to it. Yeah, just, yeah, I'm just thinking, I don't know, just was thinking.
Anything that involves that computational thinking or that algorithm step by step is a good start.
Yeah, even sometimes we use as adult in furniture, we use something and we think, I was thinking ahead for younger, for all ages. Yeah, it just.
There's a sequence, wherever there's a precise sequence that has to be followed for the task to be complete is computational thinking.
It's lovely. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
There was another one where someone asked, are they able to share our lessons with their staff? And I believe the answer is yes, right? Because it's out up here. So yeah, all of the resources are here for anyone.
And like I said, we're on our learning journeys too. So please modify, and again, we don't know the needs of your learners, obviously, because we're not in your classrooms. So you may find that something, I always find it amazing, a lesson or learning experience works really well in one class, doesn't work at all for the next. So again, really speaks to that, knowing your learners, right? So.
Yeah. And if you have any ideas, just shoot us a tweet or something. I'm always looking for new ideas and so forth.
Thank you. I wonder if there is another workshop like this one, webinar about gamification, like how to embed gamification, games in the, if possible. I just thinking, like, this just suggestion.
Well, we will plant the seed.
Yes. It just needs to be watered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You just need to cultivate it, MIshelle.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Alex. That's exactly what I thought. As soon as we talked about furniture, I was like, oh, I've put way too much IKEA furniture together in my life and always have those extra pieces that you're like, where are these supposed to go?
So true.
Something's going to fall apart.
Yeah. But you'll have a piece.
Yeah, IKEA furniture lasts about 2 or 3 moves for me.
Well, it's so true with coding though. If you miss that one small step, it might fall apart. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure who mentioned the furniture for adults, like putting furniture together.
Yeah.
But that was genius. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So if there are no more questions, I'm going to say goodbye to everyone. Thanks again, Melanie, MIshelle, and Amanda. It was really fun working with you guys. And I think Melanie told me she's part of the Summer Institute. So maybe I will see you again in August. And I'm going to end the webinars. And thank you all for your participation and great weekend to all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.